Hi, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology. It is Thursday, March 12th, and today I'm going to take a look at a horary chart that came up in my online classroom last night concerning the trajectory of the coronavirus in the United States. So, the reason that I decided to do this is that because I've been getting lots and lots of emails, comments, questions across all of my social media platforms about the coronavirus here in the US and how it's going to evolve or develop. I got a lot of questions yesterday after also doing a talk on Jupiter's upcoming conjunction to Pluto. We know that Jupiter, a planet of expansion, growth, when it is debilitated in its fall in Capricorn, and also in a conjunction with the Lord of Death and Rebirth, Pluto, can mean that something is proliferating or growing that is dark or heavy. For example, right now we have two major appearances of this archetype in the world. One is the widespread the spread of the coronavirus around the world, and the other one is this spread of fear and panic about it. And they're not necessarily the same thing. So, for example, the coronavirus is definitely spreading all over the world. But at the same time, it's possible that somewhat disproportionate levels of fear are spreading at the same time. So those are both Jupiter Pluto dynamics. And that kind of aura surrounds this conversation. And so it's important before I dive into a chart looking at the likely trajectory of the coronavirus here in the US, which is what I've been getting the most questions about, that we just say that in talking about this, beware of the fact that Jupiter Pluto in the sky right now can also amplify fear. And obviously, as astrologers, especially more predictive Hellenistic astrology, horary astrology, we're trying to give you a sense of what the karmic weather is like, and that can help us know what's coming and ride it out. But the way that we ride it out is always what's important. So, in doing this chart today, one of the difficulties that I had in deciding whether or not to do it was, wanting to be sure that in delivering this news or this kind of information, that I'm also really emphasizing the importance of staying in the heart and of really staying centered in peace, love, trust, hope, encouragement, because those are the qualities that you really need to have a healthy immune system anyway. And those are the qualities that we need to live through any kind of dark time. In fact, that's the opportunity that dark times provide us with, which is why yesterday when I did my Jupiter Pluto video, I also talked about the Kali Yuga and the opportunity of the Kali Yuga from the standpoint of the yogic scriptures to when we're faced with overwhelming darkness, it's actually a perfect time to sort of double down on our spiritual lives. So anyway, um, all of that being said, this question that was asked is specific to the US. So this has to do with the trajectory of the virus in the US. Now, what is a horary chart? A horary chart is a chart that is cast for a question that is being asked. So it's like the birth chart of a question. And this is one of the oldest forms of astrology, dates all the way back to the medieval era, maybe even all the way back to the Hellenistic era of astrology. Indian, Persian, Arabic astrologers, medieval European astrologers practiced it. It's a really, really beautiful form of astrology. Again, I teach a 1-year class in horary that begins in June. So again, I encourage everyone to check that out on my website. And the techniques that are used in order to answer any question that's asked, these are predictive questions typically. The techniques are really sophisticated and very beautiful and symbolically just complex, and I mean it's just amazing. I don't think there's any form of astrology that's ever captured my mind and my heart and my imagination quite as much as horary. Anyway, so this question was asked, how is the coronavirus going to spread? And I'm going to show you the chart and explain the answer. And we'll see. I'm not always right about my horaries. I have a pretty good, track record. I have a pretty good batting average, I guess you could say, but I'm not always right. So we'll see what happens. Now, in this chart, what will happen with the coronavirus? The question was asked last night in my online classroom. So this chart is going to be cast from the position of the person who is receiving the question. So if you're the diviner, you're the reader, then you cast the chart at the time that you receive the question from the place that you received the question, and that is the birth chart of the question. Then once you've done that, we want to assign significators, which means we want to assign planets to play certain roles on the stage. The ascendant is always going to be given to the querent, or the one asking the question, or the one that the question pertains to. In this case, Virgo is rising, and so Mercury becomes significator of the sort of state of the nation or the health of the nation. That's the question that is being asked, is about we the people in the United States, what's going to happen to us. So Mercury comes to represent that. Now I'm going to put a little circle around Mercury so you can remember that. There's Mercury representing sort of we the people. Now the moon is going to represent the flow of events. The moon always represents the flow of events in horary, but sometimes can co-signify whoever is asking the question. In this case, we're going to give the moon the flow of events. And then we need to find the illness. Well, the sixth house is going to be the house of disease. And so the ruler of the sixth house, Jupiter, what do you know, happens to be, in this case, the coronavirus. So what we are looking for is going to be what happens to the people. We can see what's going to happen very clearly because of what's taking place with the moon. Now, I'm going to unplug the outer planets for a minute just to make this view a little bit clearer. So we have Jupiter representing let me actually retag these really quick. So here's we the people, Mercury, here's the flow of events, the moon, here's the coronavirus, Jupiter. Now, what we can see is that the moon at 23 Libra, who is in the first house, which would be the actual sort of body of the nation, the house can be a part of the signification as well. It's on the second house cusp, which can also be hitting the economy in this case. So that's something we'll come back around to. But the moon has just made an aspect to Jupiter. See, the moon is at 23 Libra, Jupiter's at 21 Capricorn. So it's just made a square to Jupiter. And then it is going from 23 Libra, and the next planetary aspect it will make will be a trine to Mercury. So this is called a translation of light. This is where the moon is effectively acting as an interlocutor or a kind of connector between two things. In this case, the moon is connecting the disease to the people. That is a way of saying that in the flow of events, what's going to happen is the disease is going to spread. Okay, so that's simple and probably not all that that's not like mind shattering, right? I mean, you could probably predict that just by looking around at the news and being like, it is spreading, so this just confirms the disease is going to spread. But the more concerning piece about this is that Mercury is going into Pisces and going into the sixth house, which is the house of disease and the sign that is ruled by Jupiter, which is in this case the coronavirus within the context of this specific chart. So Pisces is also the sign of Mercury's detriment and Mercury's fall. So what we're saying is that the disease is going to spread, and the American people, in a general overall sense, the health is about to go down considerably. So what is this saying? Is this a phenomenon that's going to go away overnight? Not according to this horary. This horary would be more. I think you could say that this horary is more on the side of we're going to see this become more widespread, and more people are going to get sick, and the sort of general state of this disease in the country is going to spread in a not great way. So the outlook is not good in terms of, will this be quickly contained and just go away? No, it will probably spread, and the general health of the population will be impacted negatively. Okay, now, so that's the first thing that the horary achieves. And that's really the only thing that we need to know, is it will spread and get worse. Okay, how much worse, etc. I don't particularly, as a reader, think that's particularly important. The basic thing that this person was concerned about is, will this become more widespread? And the answer here is yes, and the health of the people will suffer. There is one, however, really interesting thing in this horary, which is that, a few of them that are kind of peripheral. The moon at 23 Libra is on Spica, which is a fixed star that has the connotation of being related to the Virgin Mary, or the protection of the goddess. And so Spica is one of the most sort of protective, benefic stars, and in horary will typically signify some degree of good luck or protection involved, which is auspicious. This is telling us, I see this as a reader and I go, okay, Like things are going to be okay. It might get a little grim. Things might get a little dark. This might spread more, but there's some protection here in the midst. Spica is probably arguably the most benefic star in a horary that you could have, and it generally has a kind of goddess protection energy around it, which is really nice. However, this also, the moon is in what was called the via combusta, which is a 15-degree range between 15 Libra and 15 Scorpio, called the burnt road, and typically means that there's a difficult road ahead, but there's protection involved. So that gives us room for hope. Now, as the translation of light is occurring that I just explained, as the moon picks up the disease, Jupiter, and transfers it to the people, Mercury, and then Mercury enters the 6th house of disease and its fall and detriment, we also see the moon crossing into the 2nd house, which is the finances or the money in a sense. So this could have a pretty big effect on the economy in May for a while. Not surprising, we're already seeing it have an effect on the economy and the stock market, but that's indicated here that that may intensify a little bit. We can also see this because we know that the moon is eventually going to go into its fall in the 2nd house of finances, which means there could be maybe even some degree of a recession involved with this, or some period of real continued dipping. Okay, so if I back up for a second, there's a few more things I want to show you, but if I back up for a second, I'm like, okay, par for the course. We've been talking about Saturn's conjunction with Pluto for like 10 years. I remember when I first started studying astrology, people were talking about Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And, for a long time, people said, look, things could get pretty gnarly, pretty dark. There could be a recession. There could be diseases. There could be natural disasters. Those were all things astrologers have been talking about for, like I said, like 10 years. And I have heard people for 10 years say, we need to be hopeful. We need to be, sort of stay in our hearts. We need to not freak out. And those lessons still apply. So here we are. We're in the midst of one of the significations that many people have been looking at for a long time. If you saw the Pluto panel that I hosted back at the beginning of January, we talked about these kinds of things happening. And now here we are in the midst of it. And it looks like, yeah, things could get even a little bit more gnarly. But does that mean that we should flip out? Does that mean that there should be widespread panic? No, that's exactly what astrologers for so long have also been saying not to do during this time. So just because dark things are happening or may unfold does not mean that that widespread fear and panic should unfold along with it. And that doesn't mean we should go roll around in a germy mud puddle and just be like, oh, I'm pretending like nothing is going on. No, if we're living in a dark moment where there's real risk or whatever, we need to be careful and have the right plans in place and try to respond in the right ways and be intelligent. And each of us, that may look a little bit different for you. I know like some of my friends are thinking about how to take care of childcare if the schools close or whatever. There's like that we need to think through things, be careful, be wise. And this chart certainly says that don't take it as though nothing is going to happen, or don't take the position that this is all a fiction, right? I think this horary is very clear that it's not. However, this horary, nowhere does it say panic. In fact, moon at 23 Spica, the protective energy, you're protected, you're safe. There's a guardian angel with us right now. Part of the way that the guardian angel is with us is whether or not we embody, peace, hope, love, trust, optimism, light. These aren't words at this point. These are things that we need to take seriously. These are practices we need to embody. So I think I just wanted to say that because like here we are, we're in the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. We're in the effects of the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. We've got Mars with Pluto, and there's just this big lineup in Capricorn that we've been talking about forever. Here it is. Now, how are we responding? Are we responding from our hearts, or are we responding from fear? And to, people often, again, there's this false dichotomy where people are like, well, if I respond from my heart, then that means that everything, all the bad stuff will go away and there will be no difficulties. No, that's not what it means. It means that we will move through the difficulties, understanding that, our happiness is not defined by either the major the upswings in life or the downswings. That is what astrologers were talking about thousands of years ago. That's still what we should be talking about today. Our true peace, our true happiness is not determined by the coronavirus. I know that Some people are going to be affected by it physically, personally, in their families. People are going to be hit really hard by it in different ways. But still, I propose the radical notion that when we live lives from the heart, when we live courageously in the heart, ultimately we can find a sense of trust, peace, and happiness in all seasons. And we need to practice that right now. Because it's a practice. It's not just an intellectual disposition. So at any rate, that's my little pep talk. Now, the other thing that's really interesting in here is that typically in a horary like this, the sun would represent the president. I just have to say this just for shits and giggles. I'm sorry, guys, but I just couldn't resist. Uh, the president is in the sixth house of disease, in the sign of the disease, and has recently had separating sextile with Jupiter. And I don't know, because I don't keep up with the news as much as some people, but I recently heard that he had some contact with someone who had the coronavirus or something. Anyway, everyone in my classroom last night was speculating, being like, I wonder if this means that the president's sick, or that this could be a way of saying that the president is completely obsessed with or preoccupied with the disease right now. It could also be a way of saying that somehow the disease will have a really adverse effect on the presidency. But in a mundane sort of horary like this, the sun would represent the president. And I just think this is really interesting, because it shows some very close relationship between the president and the disease at this time. And I think it goes beyond saying that it just has to do with his concern or response to it from the standpoint of his job. And I say that because the very close contact between him and the disease right now speaks to, and the fact that I don't know the story, but I think he had some kind of contact with someone who had the coronavirus or something like that. So it could be that he's very, very, and I've heard he's a germaphobe. He's like really afraid of germs and stuff like that. So I thought, wow, that's really, and who knows what it means. And again, I don't mean to make any, I'm not saying that I know at all what's going on with him, but I thought this contact between the sun in the chart and Jupiter was sort of interesting. And, this was something last night in class that was just an interesting piece of the horary that we were sitting and wondering about. Anyway, the other thing you can see in this chart that's really interesting is the ruler of the second house of finances is Venus, who's currently strong, but in the eighth house. And typically that means afraid, or there's some degree of fear surrounding the markets right now. And that's par for the course. We know that that's true just by looking at the news. But at any rate, the chart overall, I think the simple message of the chart is that we're going to see this spread probably more. And when you see the timing of this, probably over the next 5 weeks, as we have 4 to 5 weeks, as we have this aspect between the moon translating the light from Jupiter, the disease coronavirus, to the virus, to Mercury, the people, that we'll see a about 4 to 5 week time window, which perfectly coincides with Jupiter's conjunction to Pluto, which is what I was talking about yesterday. So, the good news here in the United States is that it's almost spring. The light starts taking over more and more, and one would think that has to be a positive. But at any rate, I hope that you are all doing well and weathering the storm of all of this, all of these events and the energy surrounding it. One thing that's been really important for me has been to not obsess over it by checking the news like 24/7. My wife and I have sat down and made some plans about, if my daughter's preschool closes, or, like just kind of thinking through things carefully. But we've also been careful not to participate in the panic. And I can't say that I'm any expert or that you should listen to me about what you should or shouldn't do about anything, but I got to think that participating in the panic can't be helpful to anyone. So even we know that like your immune system is negatively affected by being really strung out on fear. So anyway, hopefully this horary chart was interesting, and I'll look forward to unpacking the transits with you in the weeks ahead as Jupiter and Pluto get closer together. We'll probably have more to say about that transit as well. We've got some really big transits coming up very shortly. For example, the spring equinox is coming up, and we've got Mars going through conjunctions to Jupiter and then Pluto. And then we've got Saturn moving signs into Aquarius, and then Mars conjoining with Saturn in early Aquarius, and then Mercury going through a conjunction with Neptune. like, and that's all between now and like the very beginning of April. So there's a lot to look at this month, and I'll look forward to journeying with you together. I'd love to hear you and your thoughts. How are you doing right now? How are you handling the panic or the fear? What thoughts or advice do you have? We can share with each other, encourage one another, and give us your advice about how you've been managing to stay in a good place in your heart, and how you're managing any fear or anxiety that comes up. I'm sure everyone will benefit from sharing that positive feedback with each other. So have a great day, and we'll see you again soon. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.